Hello, everyone. This is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. And our topic for tonight is the Hyper-Imperialism Report, Part 3. But before we get to Part 3, I do want to make a comment about the campus revolt, the demonstrations, and especially the suppression of free speech, and free assembly currently going on, all across this country, city after city, and university after university, and town, after town. We claim still to be a democracy. There are many of us who know the truth, who know that we haven't been a democracy for a very long time. I myself have characterized, the United States as an inverted totalitarian system. And I've characterized the contest between Donald Trump and Joe Biden as a contest between inverted totalitarianism and open fascism. In the violations of free speech and the suppression of free speech, coinciding with the insistence that this administration is defending democracy, internationally, and is defending democracy against Donald Trump. We see what a lie this is. There's no defense of democracy here. There's an undermining of democracy by undermining two of the primary functions of democracy: free speech, and free assembly. It is contemptible. We can all see it. The mask is ripped off. The suppression, the repression is being encouraged by the Biden administration. It's being called for by the head of a foreign government, Mr. Nazi Netanyahu. He interferes in our politics by calling for our national government, our state governments, our local governments to repress the people who are defending Palestinian rights. It's not simply Palestinian rights, though, that are being defended. It's democracy that is being defended by these students, insisting on their rights and insisting on the rights of others in Palestine, the human rights of others in Palestine. So this is all disgusting. It's all contemptible. The mask, is ripped away. And we all see it. This government must be stopped in what it's doing. Must be stopped in its support for genocide. It must be stopped, in its repression here at home, at well. It is wholly, in the wrong. The pronouncements the pronouncements of the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, are ridiculous lies. He is a ridiculous liar and an authoritarian himself. And he joins the regime, of Joe Biden in holding up Israel, as a paragon, and in voting the arms that the Israelis just got, and the arms the Ukrainians just got, as well. This Ukrainian regime has been a fascist regime from the start. And this government has always talked about their defense of Ukraine as a defense of democracy. It's ridiculous, it's contemptible, and it has to end. But that was not what I intended to cover here tonight. I want to go back to the Tricontinental Institute report that we were considering. I see Dee is here. Hi, Dee, and also Lana Dell. Actually, Lana Dell was the first to announce herself today. Steve Wolfbrand says, hello, Lana and all. And 69 says, professor got body slammed at the college. Suppression is of free speech is leaving speechless. I guess that's the fascists' goal. I guess so. And I'm glad everyone sees that it's fascism that we are facing. Lana says, howdy, Steve. Dee says, hello, everyone. Lana says, that's not nice calling him name. Kidding. He is a monster at this point. But Netanyahu. He is a Nazi in Israeli clothing. Steve says, hi, Dee. Lana says, hi, Dee. And Dee says, hi, Steve. Hi, Lana. Now let's get to the report. So we were well into part 5. But where are we here? Part 2. Let's go further. Well into part 5. Where are we? Here we go. After going through a variety of changes in the economic basis of the world order, we stopped here at U.S. strategy to curtail China's economic influence. No, we didn't. We stopped below. I recognize that we covered that as well. That was the CNAS section. We stopped here at the global north pushing the world towards war. Peaceful rise of the global south countries led by Asia and especially China poses a comprehensive economic challenge to imperialist world dominance. For the first time in 600 years, the Atlantic imperialist powers are confronted with a non-white economic force capable of countering them. To contain China's rise, the United States is intensifying internal integration within the imperialist camp, allowing and demanding that two fascist countries defeated in World War II, Japan and Germany, rearm themselves. But U.S. political leaders unanimously consider it essential to contain and defeat China as a core strategic enemy and started a new Cold War. U.S. military leaders make alarming statements about China. The U.S. geopolitical goal is to overthrow the regimes of China and Russia, denuclearize, and if possible, dismember both countries, split them into several small countries, and ensure they can never again challenge U.S. military or economic hegemony. On Russia's western border, NATO's eastward expansion has brought the security issue of Ukraine to a critical boiling point. Before the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the United States had promised Gorbachev that NATO would not expand eastward, since its original mission, countering the Soviet Union and containing European communism, had concluded with the end of the Cold War. However, NATO reneged on that gentleman's agreement, and I am being joined here by Jawad. Hello, Jawad. For the dissolution of the... I'm sorry, Jawad. Okay, Jawad, I'm going to go on with what I was reading, and I'll talk to you as we go through. Okay. On Russia's border, NATO's... However, NATO reneged on that gentleman's agreement, and it inducted 14 new member states, including several former Soviet republics. In 2018, Ukraine amended its constitution to prioritize joining NATO and the European Union as its national strategy, posing a significant threat to Russia's national security. With Kyiv only 760 kilometers away from Moscow, allowing NATO to deploy nuclear weapons in Ukraine would constitute an uncontrollable military threat to Russia. Simultaneously, neo-Nazi forces in Western Ukraine were on the rise. In January 2022, torchlight processions were held in cities like Kyiv and also Lviv, commemorating the birthday of Nazi collaborator Stepan Bandera. Prior conflicts saw Western Ukrainian nationalist extremists hoisting Nazi flags and threatening to annihilate Eastern Ukrainians and pro-Russian elements. Ethnic Russians in Eastern Ukraine had to organize resistance and seek Russian aid. Under these circumstances, Russia launched a, quote, special military operation, unquote, in Ukraine, essentially facing a direct confrontation with NATO's military force.
Hello there.
Hello, Jawad. How are you?
Good, good. Yeah, the thing you were talking about, it's true. Like, even the Russian president has even said there's neo-Nazi presence in Ukraine. He
Oh,
was
yes.
not lying about it. It's true. Just look.
Oh, yes. They were present, and they had a pretty dominating position in the government of Ukraine for quite some time because of their military presence.
Yes,
Going
of course.
on, in the Western Pacific, the United States continually attempts to stoke tensions over the South China Sea and Taiwan. In August of 2022, despite strong opposition and solemn representations from China, U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, seriously violating the One China principle and the provisions of the 3 U.S.-China joint communiques
Like
severely.
they are trying to be a bully toward the Chinese government.
They are, of course, Jawad. That is exactly what they're doing. Severely impacting the political foundation of Sino American relations. It is important to recall that in 1972, in the Shanghai Communique, the United States accepted the quote, one China policy, unquote, the one China, unquote, policy, which acknowledges that there is only one China and that Taiwan is not a separate sovereign state. In
Of
August,
course, don't forget, during the Chinese dynasty, when they overthrew the Taiwanese, that means the Democratic dynasty, they were going toward Taiwan's, but the American at this time and during these years, they wanted to expand their influence, so they made Taiwan a military base for them, like that. If ever Taiwan get attacked, they can attack the Chinese forces in the sea. But this is only to expand their manpower. But just look at in Ukraine currently, the Ukrainian army is reporting that they are losing ground every day
oh
since the
yes,
war in
yes,
Gaza broke out.
oh yes, we're looking at the collapse, okay, of the Ukrainian armed forces. It will be a surprise to me if they can last longer than another 6 weeks. But that's, just my opinion. People feel differently. Some people think, they'll last as long as the end of June. Some people think they'll last until the end of summer. But generally speaking, there's a wide range of opinion that agrees that the armed forces of Ukraine are collapsing right now and that the aid from the United States is not going to arrive in time to help them to shore it up, that they're going to collapse. Going on. In August of 2023, the U.S. Navy, along with forces from Canada and the Republic of Korea, conducted joint military exercises in the Sea of Japan and the Yellow Sea. However, the exercises ended abruptly after just 5 hours due to China's targeted military mobilizations. That's in August of 2023. Since Ferdinand Marcos Jr. became president of the Philippines in June of 2022, the Philippines has opened multiple military bases to the United States, strengthened security ties with Australia and Japan, and sparked disputes with China over sovereignty issues in the South China Sea. Warships from the US, Canada, Australia, and other countries also frequently patrol and exercise in the South China Sea, causing several close encounters and frictions with the Chinese Navy. To date, faced with continuous provocations from the US and its allies, China has maintained a restrained stance, striving to avoid military conflicts with the US and its allies, a confrontation that could escalate into a global nuclear war. However, Taiwan holds a special significance for China. As part of China, historically and under international
While
law,
you're talking about it, currently says that the Ukrainian economy is losing $7 million in corruption case.
yes, I believe that's quite true, and that a lot of the money that is being sent over there now by the United States is going to be absorbed by the corruption. But let us
Yep.
get back to China and stay on there, okay, for a moment. Okay, but I didn't want to mention that in case this should escalate into a global nuclear war, I think the United States and ourselves have to keep in mind that the combination of Russia, China, okay, and North Korea, okay, and Iran have a key military advantage over the United States right now. And that key military advantage is hypersonic missile technology, for which there is no defense currently available. If we get into a nuclear confrontation, if one starts, then the cities of the United States will be open to the intercontinental missiles of North Korea and China, okay, and Russia.
Because don't forget, the US has spent a lot on Ukraine, so they don't have anymore the military capability to confront the
Yes,
Chinese government.
yes, that is quite true. And we also have to keep in mind not only do what I'll call the global South powers, even though they're not really global South, uh, those powers not only have an advantage in hypersonic missiles, they have an advantage in warheads, okay, as well. The Russians alone have an advantage, okay, in warheads. But when we add the North Koreans and the Chinese, okay, to that, there's a considerable advantage, okay, in warheads for their side. I think the military planners ought to be taking that into account and ought to be restraining the civilians, okay, the State Department people, who are extremely bellicose and are warmongers, basically. And they better be careful about where they are mongering these days because we don't have the same kind of advantages we had in earlier times. But going back to China, as part of China historically and under international law, Taiwan's continued separation signifies that China's civil war and even the century of the humiliation, quote unquote, that began with the Opium Wars in 1840 has not ended. The division of Taiwan is unacceptable to China, ultimately, even if it means the risk of direct war against the United States. I have to add at this point, this report is from the Tricontinental Institute of Social Research. One of the centers of the Tricontinental Institute of Social Research is in China. So the connections of this institute to China and to opinion in China are very close. They know what the Chinese think, and they know what will be acceptable to them and what will not be acceptable to them. Going on, with the direct support of Biden and Blinken, Israel is advancing an ethnic cleansing and genocide of Palestinian civilians in Gaza. The situation in Gaza starkly reveals the true face of the imperialist camp of the global North as a collective of white settlers. When conflicts arise between white settlers and colonized people of color, the imperialist camp uniformly stands with the settlers. The fault lines of Ukraine and Palestine have exacerbated the polarization of the Social Democrats, sections of whom have proven unable to overcome their desire for acceptability and join in a robust movement for peace. Let us return to the quote from NATO and the EU that they would be, quote, protecting our 1 billion citizens, preserving our freedom and democracy against all threats, unquote. And here, of course, I have to add, if preserving our democracy, our freedom, okay, and our democracy means repressing freedom of speech in this country and at our universities all over the country,
Because
then
don't forget, even NATO, is not capable to confront Russia currently. That's why they are keeping the war in Ukraine stable while trying to invest to return to their military capabilities, but they are still down in the military strength because they are still supplying the corrupt government of Ukraine,
well, they're down.
and then they empty their pockets just for their cause of keeping Russia out of Ukraine. Like, what the heck, man? You're totally just going in. Are you not aware that your money is going to fund war? That you are not even aware about it? just the people must talk about it. It's not just.
Okay, they're also down in relation to the Russians for another reason, and that is over a period of time, the West has lost its capability to produce the means of war, the ammunition, tanks, okay, the planes. Uh, there are disadvantages in some of the new tools of war, specifically the drones, okay, the missiles, the cruise missiles, okay, the ballistic missiles. Uh, all those advantages belong now to the global South, okay, and not to the global North. So the global North has to be very careful. But to finish what I was saying, uh, it doesn't look like we're preserving our freedom, okay, in our democracy when we repress freedom of speech and freedom of assembly here in the United States and in the universities all across the country. This is a hypocrisy that in this time period we cannot stand. This hypocrisy is too naked. You can't talk freedom and democracy out of one side of your mouth and undermine it out of the other side of your mouth and with your actions. Going on. This sentence appearing in the first paragraph of the NATO EU 2023 communique clearly outlines the structure of today's world. The imperialist camp, centered around the United States and based on NATO infrastructure, is fully united and mobilized politically, economically, and militarily, ready to stifle any emerging forces that might pose a threat to their hegemonic status. This unprecedented, immense imperialist pressure has forced many in the, quote, rest of the world, unquote, those outside the imperial camp, to identify alternative structures and identities for self-preservation. So that ends the section on the changes that have taken place in the world, and I hope you'll all agree that these economic changes have been profound. We know the military changes have also been profound. We see this every day, but not many of us are so aware of the great economic changes that have now occurred, giving the global South a stronger economic base than the global North. Now I want to move into the epilogue, the final section, okay, of the report, where the authors outline a credible economic and political alternative world order. And if you look at figure 51, which I now am showing on your screen, you see the three new organizations which were created by the nations of the multipolar world. First, the Friends of the UN Charter, or FUNC, F-U-N-C. The first of the circles, okay, on the left here. Who are the nations in FUNC? Algeria, which is also a member of OPEC. Venezuela, also a member of OPEC. Bolivia, Laos, also Mali, Nicaragua, Zimbabwe, Palestine. Equatorial Guinea, okay, a member of OPEC. St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Okay, the Democratic Republic of Korea, that is North Korea, as we often call it here. Cuba, Syria, okay, and Eritrea. Those are the nations that have joined the Friends, okay, of the UN Charter. I find it shameful that there's a separate organization of Friends of the UN Charter committed to defend the UN Charter when the United States and its allies and the Western core were the nations that started the United Nations in the first place but are now not defending the UN Charter, but violating it every day in many ways. There are two other nations that are friends, okay, of the United Nations.
Like I can name you some countries. Like the US is the first country who is going against the United Nations Charter. Even Germany, France, like all of Europe, is standing by the Democrats and the Republican violation of the UN Charter. It's not the first time they do this. They even did this in 2014 during the Gaza genocide in 2014 too. Don't forget it.
Yes, you are quite
We
right.
have always and always gone behind UN Charter.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Uh, the three organizations we're talking about here are the Friends of the UN Charter, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO, which is the second of the circles you see. And then there is the third circle here, which is BRICS 10. And we know BRICS 10 will soon be augmented uh, by many other nations. We have to note, okay, that Belarus and also Cambodia are members of the Friends of the UN Charter and also members of SCO, which is why we see this intersection here. But the other members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization actually include, okay, a member of NATO, specifically Turkey. Now, Turkey is not a full member. It is a, what's it called here? What is the D?
Like an observer state. Was like this.
No, I think the observer status is O. I think that's what it would be called. But let me find out what D is. Okay, I think D signifies O is an observer, and D, okay, is a dialogue member. So the Ds are not actually full members, but they are there for dialogue, okay, with the other members. So Turkey is a dialogue member. Pakistan is a full member. Okay, Kazakhstan is a full member. Uzbekistan is a full member. Sri Lanka is a dialogue member. Qatar is a dialogue member. So is Myanmar. Kuwait is a dialogue member, but also a member of OPEC. Azerbaijan, okay, is a dialogue member. Also, Nepal is a dialogue member. Bahrain is a dialogue member. Armenia is a dialogue member. Tajikistan is a full member. Mongolia is an observer. But Kyrgyzstan is a full member. The Maldives is a dialogue member. Afghanistan is an observer member. Now, we have to note here, of course, with respect to Belarus, it's an observer member. Cambodia, okay, is a dialogue member. Now we come to China. China, okay, is an original member and it's a full member. Russia is an original member and a full member. Iran is a full member. I don't know what the N stands for. I'll look that up for a while. But that's a member of OPEC as well. Some other members, okay, India is a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They're a full member. We, of course, the United States, tries to continuously to incorporate India, okay, into the West, but they're never fully incorporated. Saudi Arabia, okay, is a dialogue member, is a member of OPEC. But Egypt is a dialogue member. Okay, the United Arab Emirates, okay, are a dialogue member. So the Shanghai Cooperation Organization has an enormous number, okay, of members in it. Okay,
Even Qatar?
Huh?
Even Qatar?
Yes, if it's okay, if it's mentioned there, it is a one of the members. Let me see what the N stands for here. Okay, the N stands for a new member. Not surprising. So the UAE is a new dialogue member. Egypt is a new dialogue member. Saudi is a new dialogue member. Okay, so the N stands for new. Are there any other N's? No, I guess not. Okay, so that's the second circle then is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And as you see, it has, what has it got? 4 members, 5 members, 9 members, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So altogether, there are 25 members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Okay, it's a big institution. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization doesn't restrict itself to the discussion, okay, of economic affairs. It also includes a discussion of military affairs, okay, and military alliances. So it's potentially the organization that may one day counter NATO. It's not as well integrated, of course, okay, as NATO. Okay, it's not a formal alliance, but it does have a military component, and that should be noted. Okay, in the BRICS 10, okay, the BRICS 10 includes, of course, the following members: China, original member, also Russia, okay, an original member. Iran is a new member, but it's a full member. Then there's India, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, okay, UAE, Brazil, South Africa, okay, and Ethiopia, which is a new member. Okay, so those are the current members, okay, of BRICS. There are the overlapping members between BRICS and SCO, okay, which we've gone over, okay, already. 7 of the 10 members of BRICS overlap, okay, with SCO. Okay, 3 of the 10 members of BRICS overlap both with SCO and with the Friends of the UN Charter. Those 3, one might say, the core, okay, of this whole global South effort to set up new institutions. The core nations are China, Russia, okay, and Iran. And we notice that in relation to the Middle East right now, where we have the developing conflict of Israel, okay, and Iran, we also have the Chinese and Russians who seem to be backing Iran. They're in the background right now, but they're definitely backing the Iranians in this conflict with the Israelis, okay, and the United States. So it's very important, okay, to note that. Okay, so going past the chart, let's read the text that's associated with the chart, see what they have to say about it. 25 years after the publication of Zbigniew Brzezinski's The Grand Chessboard, 1997, identifying this as the greatest geopolitical danger for the United States, China, Russia, and Iran have indeed grown closer in various fields, including economics, politics, and security. Not coincidentally, they are the only three countries that are in the BRICS 10, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Group of Friends in Defense of the Charter, and United Nations. The driving force behind this convergence, precisely as Brzezinski predicted, is the escalating hegemonic pressure from the imperialist group led by the United States. Compared to NATO, which is highly unified in ideology, military command, and intelligence sharing, there is no anti-imperialist international organization that is comparable. Nevertheless, three influential international organizations have emerged within the Global South, and of course we've gone over some of this here. The BRICS organization, which now represents 45.5% of the world population, 35.6% of the GDP as measured by PPP, and 44% of the global industrial output. The BRICS New Development Bank began with $100 billion in capital investment, and its contingent reserve structure also holds $100 billion. That's pretty impressive, and I think those resources actually exceed those of the World Bank. Certainly, the initial capital investment exceeded the initial capital investment of the World Bank and the IMF. Going on, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization started with a focus on security issues. It brings together countries from the Eurasian continent, from the large economic performers like China, India, and Turkey, to the leading OPEC countries such as China, such as Saudi Arabia and the UAE, as well as member countries of the League of Arab States, to address security challenges through multifaceted development approaches. The SCO represents 60% of the Eurasian territory, a quarter of the world's GDP, and 40% of the global population. In July 2023, Xi Jinping proposed the creation of an SCO development bank. But there's no SCO development bank yet. There is the BRICS Development Bank, the New Development Bank, the bank headed by Dilma Rousseff, a Brazilian, the former president, of Brazil. The newly established Group of Friends in Defense of the Charter of the United Nations, or FUNC, FUNC, seeks to advocate for multilateralism and oppose hegemony and unilateralism within the framework of the UN Charter. Currently, this group of 20 countries, with Venezuela as its initiator, that's interesting. On the issue of Palestine, the group supports the just demand for national independence of the Palestinian people, backs Palestine's bid to become a formal member of the United Nations, and supports the establishment of an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital. Hitting its 10-year milestone.
As you talk about it, sounds like Belgium has did something that no European nation has did. They have kicked out their Israeli ambassador after the killing of one of their staff in Gaza.
Yes. Thank you for that observation, Jawad. I appreciate it. So, let's go back to the text here while we go. Hitting its 10-year milestone, the Belt and Road Initiative has also had a significant impact on the Global South. To date, with an investment surpassing US $1 trillion, the BRI has been a pivotal force in infrastructure development in the Global South. And this figure 52 shows the shared interests of the Global South. One shared interest is that they're largely socialist and independent. They're strongly sovereign seeking. They're currently or historically progressive. They're new, okay, and non aligned. And they're diverse generally in the global south. And they're actually heavily militarized by the US. In other words, there's a lot of US military influence in these global south countries, at least for now. But their common interests seem to be multilateralism, new modernization, regional scale economies, de-dollarization, also innovation led by the global south, not by the global north, reduction of the monopoly pricing they're subject to, also the reparations, debt solutions. They seek food sovereignty, also digital sovereignty, and environmental justice. Those are all the common interests of the global south. Now, to that, I would actually add myself that I believe all the global south nations have an interest in energy sovereignty insofar as that is possible for themselves. Those that who do not have the possibility of fossil fuel energy sovereignty will over time pursue energy sovereignty in the alternative energy area, I believe. Contrary to the imperialist camp, the primary aspirations of the global south countries are sovereignty and development and to achieve peace. Specifically, they face at least 8 common challenges and opportunities. That was figure 52. And here's the way they elaborate that in the text. With respect to multilateralism, engaging in profound multilateral dialogues and cooperation among global south countries without reliance on platforms provided by the global north countries. Then there's new modernization, building regional economic integration through economic corridors and belts within the global south to realize economies of scale at the continental level. And there's, of course, de-dollarization, reducing dependence on the US dollar, especially for those countries facing sanctions. Here I want to add, of course, the US has just been threatened with extended sanctions by Antony Blinken. So he's been over there, he went over there, he started threatening the Chinese with extended sanctions if they don't stop certain trading they've been involved with the Russians. Of course,
like the weapon trades.
right.
That is one of it.
Yes, it is. And so Xi Jinping or his representatives, I don't even think Xi Jinping talked to Blinken, but his representatives basically told Blinken in very polite Chinese language to go straight to hell. And so the US is now preparing some menu of expanded sanctions for China.
Seriously? They really said that.
Okay, and all we have to say about that here, all we have to note about that here is the complete stupidity of it, because all that's going to do is to accelerate de-dollarization, hugely accelerate it, if they put increasing sanctions on China. Innovation led by the global south. That involves promoting democratic and open technological innovation among global south countries. This includes reducing the economic premium caused by intellectual property monopolies in areas such as medicine, new energy, and information technology. So watch out for those patents, because the global south countries may not have much patience for the monopolization that arises from patents. Going further, reparations and also debt resolution. Addressing the century-old debt trap imposed by imperialist countries through collective negotiations for reductions and compensations. And I also have to add, through actions by the global South countries to not use the international financial institutions of the collective West, but instead to use the new BRICS Development Bank, and if there is to be one, a new SCO Bank. Okay, because if the global South countries go to them for financial support, then they're in a far better position to negotiate with organizations like the IMF, the World Bank, okay, and the IADB, okay, in order to reduce the debt burdens they face, okay, from those organizations, even right up to using the alternative of simply renouncing the debt. Because, of course, since the military balance has shifted from parts of the global North to parts of the global South, it will not be possible for the institutions of the global North to use the military power, okay, of the global North to collect those debts that are simply rejected by global South countries. That's something we will see. It's not something we're seeing yet. But in the next few years, we may start to see that when global South countries rely more and more on the new development bank of BRICS. Going further, we have food sovereignty, ensuring the people's and states' right to define their agricultural and food policy without any dumping vis-a-vis third countries, transnational corporations, and free trade agreements. So that's going to be very interesting because these countries are very interested in food sovereignty because in the past, lack of food sovereignty has been used by the global North as a way to enforce its will on the nations of the global South. Then, of course, there's digital sovereignty, enhancing the capability of global South countries to control digital spaces in hardware, software, data, content standards, and regulations, and constructing alternative to the U.S. monopolized digital platforms. That's so important because what most people don't realize is that there's a cultural bias to the digital platforms that arise out of the US and other Western sources. And there's a cultural imperialism that goes on through the use or through the lack of digital sovereignty of global South countries. So as they gain digital sovereignty over a period of time, the cultural domination of the global North, okay, is going to weaken. Of course, this is very important for China, very important, okay, for Russia, very important, okay, for Islamic civilization, but very important for other alternative cultures that don't get much play on the digital platforms, okay, of the collective West or the global North, as we sometimes call it. Environmental justice, formulating fair emission rights allocation plans and urging imperialist countries to compensate for their long-term cumulative pollution. Financialization of nature is a dead end for the global South. Humanity faces a dangerous and ruthless military power. The United States is on a march to rearm the two main fascist powers of World War II as it itself turns more towards a politics of the extreme right, okay, and neo-fascism. I think that's an interesting observation, okay, and basically correct. But I also have to say that even should the U.S. be successful in rearming both Germany and also Japan, they will not be major players, okay, in the new world. But China is so powerful now, okay, okay, and also Russia is so powerful now, and Iran is becoming, okay, an increasing military power. And I don't think the rearming of Germany, okay, and Japan is going to shift the military balance back to the global north, okay, anymore, because the primary nations, okay, of the global south have now made themselves but too powerful to allow that kind of shift of the balance going on. It is sadly very true that the left forces outside the socialist camp are indeed weak, and that the subjective aspect of revolution in most countries is not ready for conducting revolution. But we are witnessing significant changes and breaks in consciousness, albeit not full class consciousness. Millions of people are in the streets reviled by the sickness of not only the United States and Israel's genocidal regimes, but also of France and the United Kingdom. The foreign nuclear powers of imperialism have banded together, demonstrating their power. The likely cost of this will be the creation of a future generation of youth in the Arab and Muslim world who will never forget nor forgive this flaunting of brutality and humiliation. Mao Zedong described this historical dialectic. Imperialism and all reactionaries looked at in essence from a long-term point of view, from a strategic point of view, must be seen for what they are, paper tigers. On this we should build our strategic thinking. On the other hand, they're also living tigers, iron tigers, real tigers that can devour people. On this we should build our tactical thinking. So Mao, okay, was basically saying, from the point of view of long-term strategy, uh, the imperialist nations are not really very strong, but from the standpoint of the short term, they are still very powerful and they can devour people. So in designing our tactics, we have to be very, very careful. We have to play it very cautiously, uh, basically designing our tactics for playing the long game as opposed to the short game, because in the long game, we will win. In the short game, we have to be cautious because the eventual paper tigers are still very, very powerful. That is the way China has been playing the foreign policy game. And that is the way Putin has been playing the foreign policy game. And that is the way Iran has been playing the foreign policy game. They all have been doing that. They're all cautious. Their strategy is one of caution and long-term growth of power, economic power, okay, and military power as well. Under President Xi Jinping's leadership, China has proposed visionary recommendations for humanity. China model of modernization, the result of socialism with Chinese characteristics, indicates a path for the global South countries that does not rely on exploiting and oppressing other nations. And we have to agree, not so far. They're not exploiting and oppressing other nations. It balances the material and spiritual civilization, the culture in the broad sense of that term, economic development, and the ecological environment, offering an essential reference for the development of the global South. As a result of 600 years of humiliation, racial violence, and economic exploitation by the global North, we have arrived at this stage of hyper-imperialism. That is what the global North is doing right now. However, an emerging global South, even with its contradictions, reminds us that human beings are not constrained to remain victims of history. Despite the different context of subjective factors, the concluding call of the Communist Manifesto, 1848, remains compelling today. We have a world to win, which, of course, is the quotation from Marx and Engels. So that's the report. Okay, I have a corrective. Okay, a few correctives to make, and I won't take too long to offer those correctives. I don't know if they should even be viewed as basically correctives, because I don't have any main arguments with what is being said here so far. But the implication of this report is that, to my mind, is that the global north, specifically the United States and Europe, the former imperialist powers, are likely to become basically economic and military backwaters, because the global South nations are now accelerating in terms of their emergence as powers. The global North is still trying to maintain the hegemony, but when they make efforts to maintain that, as they're doing now with respect to China, their efforts only involve an acceleration of the power and the emergence of the global North. Their opposition to the emergence of the global South is actually hastening rather than actually delaying the emergence of the global South. But it is not necessarily the case that the fate of the global North is confined to being a backwater. The key factors that are making it a backwater right now, the key factor involves the domination of neoliberalism in the global North. It is the idea of putting profits before people. It is the idea of managing the economies of the global North nations in such a way that they are not using the currency power of their own nations. They don't run the deficits they might run in order to accelerate their own development over a period of time. The leaders of these nations look at these nations as though they're developed, and as though basically there's not much further progress to be made, maybe technological progress of some kind, because they allow the capitalist institutions to innovate in a shallow manner in the technological sphere. And that is a revolutionary force inside of the global North. But that sort of revolutionary force is unmanaged, because it's basically left to the private economy to manage it. And that means only a very slow transformation of the economic state of the global North countries compared to the economic transformations that are going on in the global South countries. So the global South countries are catching up very, very fast. And the global North countries, as we saw from the statistics on the growth rates of the global North countries.
I'll be joining D now. It
I'm
was
sorry.
nice being in your show.
Okay, thank you, Jawad. I'll see you soon, because I'll be over to D soon.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay, bye.
basically, good night. Okay, what is going on here? Okay, basically, is that the global South countries are catching up very fast because their growth rates are 3, 4, 5 times the growth rates, okay, of the global North countries. And so, okay, the question is, how can development in the global North countries be accelerated in certain productive ways? The most productive way that comes to mind is the green revolution in the global North countries. That's proceeding only very slowly. And the reason why it's proceeding only very slowly is because the neoliberal economics of those countries isn't using the full money power they have in order to facilitate the economic development uh, towards a Green New Deal for the global North countries. They're not creating the prosperity and the economic development and the human development that they could possibly have. That's because the image they're using for economic development is neoliberal economic development, mostly based on the private sector, based on a systematic opposition to socialism or dynamic and robust kinds of, mixed economies. And specifically, it's because their management of the economy in the global North countries is systematically avoiding the MMT, the economic framework. These nations as a collective know little or nothing about the economic framework, okay, of MMT and how it could be used uh, to advance the revolution in the economic and the material and the spiritual basis of society, which has to happen to bring the world to the next stage, okay, of development. I'm not here advocating for a competition between the global North, okay, and global South. What I'm advocating for, okay, is the global North to begin to accelerate its own development so it can join the global South, okay, in accomplishing really ambitious projects that will improve the human condition of all the people of the global North. Uh, One of the heads, okay, of the European forces, uh, what's his name? Oh yeah, Joseph Borrell, famously has characterized the collective West as the garden and the global South, okay, as the jungle. The rest of the world, okay, is the jungle. Well, the truth is that from an economic standpoint and the standpoint of the competition they engage in and development, okay, of oligarchies, increasingly it's the global North that's the jungle and the global South, okay, that's becoming, okay, the garden. What needs to happen is for the global North to join the garden by using the perspectives, okay, of MMT to guide economic policy. That's something none of the global North nations, okay, have done yet. And the fusion of more socialism with action being conducted from the viewpoint, okay, of MMT can create a more prosperous global North that is not dependent on exploiting the global South, but that is perfectly capable of cooperating with, okay, the global South on an egalitarian basis, respecting the rights of the countries, okay, of the global South and the peoples, okay, of the global South. And I look forward to that kind of vision becoming triumphant. That is my vision, my view, okay, of an alternative kind, of future that would modify some of the conclusions of this particular report. Now I'm going to look at your comments, and then I will shortly join Dee's show. Shortly. So, 69. A jungle will become a paradise. Let me stop the screen here so you can see my kindly face. Okay, we've had a lot of highs. Jawad joined me tonight, which actually turned out quite well, I think. And for me, anyway. Steve Wolfbrand said, share to some new groups. I have a lot of groups. Thank you, Steve. And Steve says, I don't think anyone has ever claimed that Taiwan is a separate country from China. Yet not even the United States. We've not even officially claimed that, though our efforts seem to be devoted to trying to get Taiwan eventually to declare its independence from China. Steve says the Ukraine is on life support. Sending money and ammunition only prolongs, the inevitable. I agree. I don't think it's going to prolong the inevitable by very much, especially since a lot of the money that's going to Ukraine, I understand as much as 23 billion of it, is going to pay bills that are already incurred. That's not going to prolong the war, at all. But I think a lot of the aid is going to arrive quite late after the Russians have forced the government of Ukraine to the table on Russian terms. Steve Wolfbrand says, thank God it's Friday. 69 says, which administration was it that would agree to allow the donor class to ship productions to other nations because they didn't want to pay the U.S. workers? I've been listening, just can't get to the computer much. Which administration was it, that agreed to allow the donor class? I think the first administration to agree to this or to encourage this was the Reagan administration. But this really accelerated under the Bush administration and under the Clinton administration, of course. It accelerated under those administrations. And it kept on going during the Bush 43 administration and continued under Obama and Trump. And less so under Joe Biden, who's tried to stem the tide here, but only in the context of very unfriendly policy to China. I think what should have happened, Funk Key, is the Friends of the UN Charter. I think that what has happened here is that Joe Biden has been following a national interest first policy to some degree by trying to locate or bring some degree of manufacturing power back here. He's tried to prioritize that, but I don't think he's done it in a planned way using industrial policy. That, is what we need. It's perfectly understandable, and we have a perfect right to bring production back to this country, which is vital to public purpose here, which is vital to national security, but which is vital to the self-sufficiency of this country. It's not surprising, and it's not unfriendly to other countries to bring back that kind of capability here. It is unfriendly to try to wipe out all trade relations, with other nations, or to discriminate in trade, with respect to nations. And I think that that is not a policy we should be following, and I think to some degree the Biden administration has followed. Okay, such a policy. Steve says, smash the like button. 69 says, I wonder what Cambodia thinks of the land grab genocide in Palestine. Yeah, I wonder what they think. Steve says, a friend got shot in Cambodia during Vietnam. We weren't even there, according to our government. Steve says, BRICS should bring in Cuba, in my opinion. I think BRICS should bring in Cuba, too. And Steve says, Shanghai is China's Big Apple. It sure is Shanghai's Big Apple. It's the New York of the Far East, of course, but it's much bigger than New York in terms of population. What's the population of the Shanghai metro area? 20 million, 25 million. It dwarfs the population of the Big Apple here in the United States. 69 says a jungle will become the paradise. I certainly hope so. Well, that winds it up for me tonight. I hope you like this stream. It's one that I am very proud of. I think I extended myself here and added some thoughts that were quite new. I hope you appreciate those. And I will probably see you over the weekend in one of these streams, but I will certainly be back on Tuesday with my own streams, and Tuesday will most probably be an IR stream, but I'll be getting back a lot more to domestic policy over next week, because I think there are a lot of issues that have to be discussed, in that area. So that's all for now. 69 says, most excellent stream. Thank you. Thank you, 69, for being here. Thank you, Steve, for being here and for your various comments. And thanks to Lana, if she's still here. Thanks to Jawad. Thanks to Dee. And thanks to some others who are watching on Twitter, who, of course, cannot be named. So I will now end the stream and go over to Dee's. And I urge some of you who are still with me to go over to Dee's stream, as well. This is Around the World with Dee and Friends. You can easily find it, on YouTube if you Google. And good night. And thank you.